various versions of what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, I would love to talk about that today if you'd be so inclined. I keep
The-
seeing, I'm just like, reading the latest Politico article or whatever,
Yep.
people saying like, hey, the subsidies are dead kind of thing. Um, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the enhanced subsidies are probably dead. I think though there's a glimmer of opportunity around uh, crafting something that would include kind of the original level of ACA subsidies plus some potential HRA, HSA type of thing, which the president and Senator Cassidy, who's chairman of the Health Committee in the Senate, had been talking about in the last week. So, now whether that's that's there's a lot to navigate to get people to take what's second or third best on both sides, sort of, on their most preferred option. But I think, the number of people who would lose coverage, despite all the ACAs, in my opinion, sort of the flawed level of subsidies and the design for the enhanced subsidies is really not very good. I I think a lot of members in both parties, not just the D's, will feel pressure to do something to address some portion of the population. But if the Republicans can say, hey, this is something new, it's better, it's different, it's got this, different way of trying to address the same problem, it's more consistent with our kind of philosophy. But
Yeah, yeah.
sorry, that's too long an answer, but
No, that was a great answer. I feel like that's kind of right in line with what have been hearing. But also, I saw the other day like they drastically expanded the flexible spending account allowable amount. It was like
yeah.
from 2,500 to 5,000 or something, like the biggest expansion ever. So like things like that lead me to believe that you're right with like the whole HRA, HSA thing. And then
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe like Singapore is the other country that kind of has that kind of structure where it's like more HSA, but I'm talking way beyond my skis.
No, that's I'll have to look at that because yeah, I owe a client a little summary in a couple of weeks to say, and this would it would be hard to do something that really would be fully operational in next year in 2006. So I think the politics of this are really important to think about too, because some of the R's, there's a portion of the Republican Party who wants to be able to have something to say in the going into the midterm elections that
Mm-hmm.
more than just we killed the enhanced subsidies.
And your premium's going up
And
50%.
your premiums are going up, and you're not eligible anymore.
Yeah. My Jim, my prediction,
Yeah, okay, all right.
2026.
You're writing this down?
This is going into the newsletter for my
All right.
predictions. Trump tries to leave some kind of lasting legacy in healthcare. Like, I think I've been having private conversations where people are, I think Trump is pissed off that Obama has his name on something still. And that's the last thing he has his name on is Obamacare. So I think he's going to try to come up with some sort of like Trump care,
Oh yeah.
thing to usurp that. Ann Summers agrees with me. Ann Summers, I hope that your kiddo's doing okay.
Thank you. Yeah, he's doing a little better. Antibiotics have
Good.
helped.
Good.
But I also put a link in the chat if you guys haven't heard of Fund the Patient. It's a new initiative that is aligned to basically what Trump said about giving more money straight to people and not to health insurance companies.
Where is that, Ian? In the chat?
Right above the I 100% agree with Blake comment. It's basically just fundthepatient.com.
Fundthepatient.com. Yeah. That's really interesting. I'll look into this, and Summers, a good catch.
Yeah. Somebody I work with at Stand Together Trust was big in getting it out there. So he shared it with me last week.
Here's what's interesting though. So I know the administration's been pretty tough on Medicare Advantage, but generally speaking, they've been pretty supportive of Medicare Advantage. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy of, hey, let's cut out the insurers, but also, hey, let's support Medicare Advantage. So I don't know. Maybe they try to create some sort of like ICRA vehicle for the whole all of insurance or something like that. But I don't know. It's just a mess.
Yeah, and that's sorry I lost the video here when I went to look at the what Ann put up, but it's oh yeah. Speaking about Trump on his name, wants his name and something. That's yeah. I think there's an element of that in all this, like you're saying. He doesn't want Obama to have only the only one. As a matter of fact, big news in D.C. this week is Trump wants to put his name on the new Washington Commanders NFL football stadium.
Okay. Yes, I saw that. And I was watching, it was like Thursday Night Football. It was during the whole kind of YouTube TV and Disney schism. I don't know, Jim, if you were privy to that. But they were having basically like a network feud about including like Disney channels. And Trump came on that broadcast during the Washington Commanders game and some other team. I don't remember, but he was talking about, giving commentary on the game and then talking about how we're going to build a, beautiful new stadium, that kind of thing. I'm working with them. It's like, oh gosh. Yeah.
Skyscrapers in New York. Why not football stadiums?
Yeah. Hey, I got one more. Have you guys seen the website for Trump RX? I just got to share this real quick. It's just like so classic Trump. You see this? It's just his face. Oh man.
Oh man.
But this is also interesting.
It's like it's funny, but it's so bad
Yeah.
that's real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like satire.
The fact that it's real and like the White House tweeting out like AI generated videos and stuff like that is just
Of Trump RX.
unhinged.
Seriously?
Not of Trump RX, but of just like
just,
making fun of enemies, those sorts of things. But Trump RX did so they're trying to do that whole most favored nation thing or whatever.
Yep.
They did announce deals for GLP-1s with I think Lilly and who was the other one? Was it Novo? I guess that's the only.
Yeah, I think they all came to the table at this point.
Did they?
Yep. Yeah, there've been like 2 or 3 tranches of people coming in on that. And, there's a fair amount of sort of whether they're going to insured patients or not, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of more like, direct to consumer for people that don't have coverage. I'm not sure how it all works if you do have some coverage, but you're still paying a whopping, copay or deductible. But I think that MFN is going to be, my prediction would be that every administration going forward is going to use it and keep expanding the authority. So I think it's a significant, and eventually they'll get to launch prices of innovative drugs. Maybe not in my lifetime, but.
And remind me, most favored nation, that's like a basket of developed countries, and it's the price
Europe.
From that. Yeah,
yes.
Europe.
It's like 5 or 6 European countries. The concept's been around forever, but Trump, and it started just at the end of the last administration. But Trump, it's a classic thing for Trump to jump on because he loves negotiating anything in the world, and starting with real estate. But that's a mechanism that could be. If it becomes more, and if they really do try to tie launch prices of innovative therapies at some point in the next 5 years or whatever, that's where the pharmaceutical sector is going to come off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying who's right. I'm just saying that they're sort of gently, they've made some good progress, quote unquote, and they have the authority. It's not just Trump RX. They have the authority from legislative authority from what passed under Biden to keep sort of marching ahead on a certain number of drugs, and there's a certain criteria that.
That's right. Inflation Reduction Act stuff.
Right.
So has that it was 10. Has that expanded to, was it like 15 drugs now?
Yeah, there's several more every year. I don't remember exactly how many in each year, but each year there's another, 5 to 10. And I don't know if that goes on forever or if it's, it would need to be reauthorized at some point.
And how do those negotiations have taken the form of most favored nation? Is that kind of how the vehicle? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I actually didn't
It
know that.
started with the launch, essentially the launch price or the market price that's the benchmark they use in, several European countries. And they differ, traditionally, like Germany's had higher prices than England, for example. But
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I need to keep up with who they decide to pick, because I think it's like the beginning of every year, right?
yes, it is. Right.
And they picked Ozempic this year.
Yeah.
as,
I'll take a look at that when I get a chance, and maybe I'll put a little summary or something if that would help out.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. That sounds awesome. Cool. Anything else from your end, Jim, on what's top of mind? I mean, government got extended to what, January? And are they voting on the subsidies in December, mid-December?
They're thinking about it. I mean, the subsidies right now, if nothing is changed, they will expire and it'll, ratchet back to the pre enhanced level. So I think there will be there will definitely be votes on some things in December, I believe. Partial replacement options that we talked about. Yes.
Yeah.
But there's only 3 weeks left, really, in December.
Some sort of Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ann Summers. That's useful. I need to read up. I'm behind. All the honestly, this year, I don't know about y'all. I mean, Jim, I know it's like your job, but all the policy stuff, it just I have so much fatigue. I just stopped writing about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
It's understandable.
Totally agree. I tried to keep up with it at first, and then it was too depressing and too overwhelming.
yeah. And I was like, what's real? What isn't?
I stepped back a level myself just because it was getting to be overload.
Yeah.
But, the world goes on. Next year, midterms will be looming. Republicans, if they want to get things done, they better try to get it done next year in Congress. Because I think there's a good chance that one or both, certainly the House could flip to D easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think especially with not to, continue to talk about the subsidies, but I feel like that's such a powerful issue for people, because that's a very real, that's like grocery prices kind of, I think Miami is getting hammered by that, and a couple other.
And I think,
municipalities.
inflation, the economy, seems like it's really the top issue. And if he's, if he wants to try to keep the House and get things done in the last 2 years, Trump's got to get moving on some of that with something that really makes a difference.
Here's something else, Jeff. Maybe you can chime in on this if you have any background, or anyone. But the Rural Health Transformation Fund, $50 billion being earmarked for rural health transformation. Every state, from what I understand, scrambled with consultants, et cetera, to put together proposals on, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. And the initial tranche is you get $100 million over 5 years or something if you get selected, and then with kind of upside from there. So obviously every state, every vendor, every health system has petitioned for those funds, as they are, handouts from the government. What I understand, CMS wants to actually try and not, I don't know, solve rural health is the right word, but actually when it says transformation, think about transformation. I don't know if they're still going to kind of play tribalism in politics with like choosing certain states over others, like not choose California, right? Like those sorts of things. I have no idea. Um, but Jeff, I'm curious have you heard anything on that front, or like any of the folks you work with as far as any developments on that?
Yeah, I have not been as up to speed on that as I should. I feel like my head's been buried in the sand the last couple months of like, we have a new daughter, and we have like I have a new role, and like
Congrats.
role's been crazy. Yeah, it's awesome. All really good things. But actually just yesterday, I think it was Chrissy Farr had put a post out, like just like looking for more information on this. And one of the interesting tidbits I got from that is that like this rural health fund is larger than all the funding for the High Tech Act. And if we think about the impact that had, well, is still having, hopefully we'll get to the point of true interoperability at some point. Yeah, I mean, the potential is huge, but like the devil's in the details, and equitable distribution of those funds and how they'll be used and what the long-term impact and vision is probably, from my uninformed perspective, is still really an open question. The business that I'm working in right now is we're largely e-consult focused, like helping provide specialty care access to folks that otherwise might not. And so you think about the domains of that, and there's of course like the risk-based primary care models where the goal is referral avoidance and downstream specialty cost avoidance. But then there's incarcerated individuals, there's Medicaid population, and then rural health for us is a big focus. So I'm not sure how we're going to get involved in that, but I would love to dive in and learn more, because I think there's a huge opportunity to think about tech enablement of specialty care access, not just like point in time access, but like longitudinal co-management with a specialist who may, be in a city that's not always proximal to the rural health site of service. And how do you solve that problem without having to like lift and shift people to, like, the answer can't be just, drive or take a train or take a plane to the nearest metropolitan healthcare resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are so you're at Rubicon now, Jeff, is that right?
Yeah.
Congrats, that's awesome. And
Thanks.
they're like specialty provider group, telehealth, right? Or is it more?
That's right. So yeah, so we have, it started off as e-consults. That's the primary product, is like primary care providers will ask for a consultation about a patient. We have a network of 300 specialists that provide that consultation, and then that's incorporated into the care plan and treatment decisions by the primary care provider. We work externally. So like Rubicon's been around for over 10 years. We have a bunch of customers in all the markets I just mentioned. But a big piece is we're a large component of the Oak Street Health model, because we were bought by Oak Street Health before CVS Health bought Oak Street. And then now, it's like, what else can we do across the enterprise with Aetna and CVS Healthcare Delivery and all these other segments? That same problem, like you have people, they need access to specialty care. Like, is there a more tech-enabled way to do it?
Yeah, makes sense. Too much demand, not enough supply. Something I've been talking to. So full disclosure, Lumeris sponsored like 3 or 4 of my newsletter sends, but the one that's coming out on December 4th is about like a lot about the Rural Health Transformation Fund. And I don't know if anybody here saw, but they put together like essentially like a coalition called the Collaborative for Healthy Rural America. I don't know if that's something that would be interesting to you to talk to them and learn more about, but I know they've had conversations with CMS, and they've got like Teladoc, Unite Us, Deloitte, a couple other kind of folks within that, like with like kind of a model to support rural health essentially. And Lumeris has like the whole AI primary care as a service Tom thing, which
I'm fascinated by Tom.
Yeah.
Every time I hear David like articulate the vision for that, it's like it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So let me know if you're interested. I'm happy to make an introduction.
Thank you.
Whatever. Just drop in the news release in the chat. Because I'm just curious, and how that stuff comes together. So
I'm really wondering how it's going to be net positive. Like saying that there's not to be a total pessimist, because I'm not a total pessimist, but like saying we're going to put $50 billion towards rural health. that's a really great soundbite. But if you look at it in totality, it's like, right, but first you took a whole lot away. And if you actually look at the math, then 50 billion is less than what rural areas would have ended up with from Medicaid funding alone.
Yeah.
And so it's like I think Kaiser estimated that like $137 billion is what would be lost in Medicaid funds specifically to rural areas based on the Medicaid cuts. And so it's like, well, great, you're going to put $50 billion in, but people have to apply for it. And so you're creating an administrative hurdle to getting the money. But like, that's not actually a net benefit.
Yeah, like when you put it in that context, and Summers, it's very much so like a cut, right?
Right.
And as an aside, I just cannot fathom that we are cutting $1 trillion in healthcare spend and we still have a deficit, like, you know, or the deficit's expanding. Like, that's an aside. But I do agree. Like, I almost wonder, is this going to be like a death by 1,000 cuts / like slow attrition for like rural hospitals
Right.
to replace it with some sort of, I don't know, technology type of solution for rural health? And like, Jeff, to your point, like, are we just going to ship everybody off to like the, you know, quaternary care center in the center of whatever the closest urban area is? Like, I don't know.
And it's not that technology can't be helpful, right? I mean, it totally can replace a lot of things, but it can't replace it all. Like you have to have some in-person services. And to your comment around like death by 1,000 cuts, it just feels like it's hard to see how the $50 billion will outweigh the $137 billion cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, if you think about like running any business, right? Like you think about like innovation, you want to invest in innovation and have like focused investments in innovation, but you probably don't want to do that by like undermining the existential viability of the organization. Like this is the same thing. It's like, yes, those dollars that are removed from policy weren't as targeted on building the future, but it was like,
Right.
you know, it's the lifeblood of like keeping it going today. And so you run a risk where you build this like beautiful vision and potential future, but there's a gap and there's a lot of, you know, frankly, like, to use lack of a better term, there's death of entities that are essential for care delivery in these communities that just don't bridge to that future state. And then what are you left with?
Right. And like rural health is not my area of expertise. It's just like from a math perspective, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
It's good marketing, right? It's like, oh, we're gonna
Exactly.
making this
It's
big
like,
new
and that's what it
investment.
is. It's marketing.
And here's the thing, like, the other thing that confuses me about the whole rural health thing, and maybe this is just like, I agree with everything that's been said, but just to put on tinfoil hat for just a sec, like, rural hospitals are always like, there's always reports and financials that come out where it's like, you know, 80% are in the red. And I'm like, okay, if they're like constantly in the red, how have they not shut down? Like, how are they still around? Like, are they getting funding from somewhere? Are they like raising community funds?
Oh, they've
Well, a lot of
cut
them,
essential services.
Yeah, they just cut. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, like they're cutting things like maternity wards because those lose money.
Yeah.
And then there's a worse maternity care desert. Others though, like I used to work for Atrium Health, and our large hospitals in highly urban areas subsidized the other ones.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I was actually catching up with Drew, who works at Atrium Advocate, the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, our Charlotte market is basically subsidizing like all of the Midwest," which actually is kind of interesting when you think about it. Like, okay, let's like attach like a really highly profitable urban center to a sprawling, you know, national kind of footprint. That kind of works, you know. And maybe you come out like 2 to 4% margin, something like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, even, you know, like even in the walls of a hospital, right? Like certain lines of business are subsidizing other lines of business. And it's like, it's just a trickle down of like that same same thing. And at some point, you're going to lose or exhaust the opportunity to like load profit centers into one area, whether it's one geography, one subset of the population, it's commercial or it's a city. That can't go on forever, because those same segments have their own cost pressures and issues that will undermine that whole strategy.
Yeah.
But I do think like for those rural hospitals that don't have the support from the system or the mothership to kind of hide them in the folds, like what you're seeing is, like labor and delivery, maternal fetal medicine, these things are getting cut. These are hospitals that no longer have inpatient beds. They're effectively like what was the policy a couple of years ago where they all switched to rural acute urgent cares. Basically, they're emergency departments in rural locations, and they're hubs, they're spokes for the hub and spoke model, but they're certainly not structured to deliver the kinds of comprehensive care that those communities need.
Is that, I mean, a devil's advocate, is that bad though, if the market just isn't there to sustain it?
I guess just like, for the patient, for the people who live out there, which I guess, they are living out there by choice.
Is everybody? I don't know that everybody lives in rural areas by choice.
That's true. That's true.
Right. Some are born there and they just don't have a way to leave.
Yeah, that's very fair. But yeah, I wonder too, because you think about like something like Ballad Health, who like there are certain entities that are like allowed to have monopolies in certain areas to like, boost their profits or those sorts of things, like purposefully limit competition. I wonder if there are other regulations similar to that could like be used. Like for instance, like Stark and anti-kickback and stuff like that. Like maybe there's some sort of carve out of that for rural health where like you can create this like self-referring entity that, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud a little bit. But
your analysis on that was really good. I remember reading that. That was really
the ballad one.
Yeah,
that was fun. Well, I just like, I don't know, in my spare time, I peruse random hospital financials, and I saw that they were talking about in their financials, like they had like delineated Medicare Advantage, like repurposed these admissions into outpatient observation visits, and it was like a substantial trend. And I don't think their margin was really affected by it. I think they were just like calling it out as like a risk or something. But then I kind of got into like the rest of, what's going on with like they have because I remember reading about them in the news, like, oh yeah, they're a monopoly and like their quality deteriorated and like stuff like that. And they get to choose kind of what's included in like the quality of like their kind of little monopoly carve out TOFA situation. And is that fair? Like that kind of stuff. It's very interesting, very complex. But they seem to be doing pretty decently well without getting into kind of like the political side of it. Anyway.
Yeah, like one thing I have been that not had my heads down on is I also work with a health system here in Connecticut, Yukon Health, as a member of the board, and it's been a really exciting month in the state of Connecticut because we in Hartford Healthcare have finally gotten Prospect Medical Holdings and all their bankruptcy issues cleaned up, preserved access to those important hospitals for our state. So Yukon Health just earlier this week, we officially won the bid to buy Waterbury Hospital, which is a hospital in a high Medicaid, but not one of our large population centers in the state, but like a really important community where there's another hospital across town. But like this Waterbury Hospital was needed. And then Hartford Healthcare bought the two other hospitals, one in kind of east of Hartford called Manchester, and then one a little bit east of that called Vernon Rockville. But it's good for the state of Connecticut to finally get rid of this Prospect Medical Holdings playbook of destroying these hospitals, ruining their balance sheet, ripping the land from underneath these places. And what I liked about it is all of the deals got done cleanly, and the real estate was brought back in with the hospitals, which had to happen. And it was a Texas bankruptcy court that has been managing the proceedings. But now I'm looking out and okay, what's happening in Rhode Island, where there's some closure risk related to the bankruptcy, California. So Connecticut is out of I think out of the pressure there. But I'm hoping for a day where I don't have to see more of these Prospect Medical Holdings and Steward Healthcare terrible
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, just like the ripple effects of those private equity backed bankruptcies. That's
It's brutal.
That's been crazy. I know Molly, she was on the last. She works for Mass General Brigham, and she was saying like, that whole market is going to see ripple effects for a number of years, because I think Stewart had a pretty big presence in that area.
Yeah, especially down a little bit south of, I think it's south, how's my geography? Yeah, like there's a St. Anne's Hospital, yeah, kind of like southern Massachusetts, South Boston area, and then like stretching out towards the Rhode Island border.
Did that guy, did their CEO flee the country?
Or his yacht? It's like Ralph Delatorre.
Yeah.
Isn't the,
Did he?
I remember that.
I remember the story. It's yeah.
Me too.
So if we all think it's true,
Yeah, that's definitely true. If we all think it's true. Yeah, I'm glad to hear. Very glad to hear if you played a role. That's great that Waterbury Hospital or whatever that is doing well, because my dad grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut. So
Oh, amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, we're everything will be integrated. We'll start the integration in January, but for now, at least we got the state of Connecticut was a huge help. Obviously, UConn is it's the only public academic health system in the state. So, we had to pull a special session together for legislative approval of these big bonding packages and put them under what we call the UConn 2000 bonds. And but it was really amazing to see legislature, hospital leadership, municipal leadership around all the back tax issues all come together and say like this is the right thing to do. And hopefully the only loser in the situation is Prospect.
Yeah, well,
Great.
well deserved.
Congratulations.
Yeah. That's awesome. Glad to hear that it was relatively clean and that it's kind of been sewn back together, and hoping for similar outcomes in other states and other bankruptcies. That's interesting though. Anything else you guys are working on or top of mind, Jeff, at UConn or Rubicon?
At UConn, I mean, it's all this. It's like we have to figure out this. There's some other joint ventures going on. It's like all public. There's 2 other hospitals in the state that have been under some pressure that we're going to pull under a joint venture alongside Waterbury. So that's like the main focus for the system right now, and obviously
Like a JOA.
innovation. Yeah, there's so what we have in the state of Connecticut is we have the state of Connecticut Employees Union, and there's all of our clinical enterprise, all of the clinical enterprise employees, staffing is in the union, and then but it's a public-private partnership, so we've got these other not-for-profit health systems that are in the JV will not be part of that, so like they'll have their own staffing. We have to still work on the shared governance model. But it's a pretty cool deal. I'll as stuff continues to be public. I mean, everything is because we're a public system. But as news comes together, I'll send it over because I think it's pretty interesting how it's all coming together. On the Rubicon side, yeah, it's just always the question of like what's the right layering of artificial intelligence to all these models, and what is the next frontier? Because a lot of what we're doing is these virtual asynchronous consultations, and a big question is, well, are most doctors just using open evidence or UpToDate or something like that for the types of things that previously they would consult with a specialist to get answers to? So that's probably true. And then how we incorporate that into our business and create something that like drives the volume back in, where we can include the important skills of an actual human specialist and keep that access. That's a priority for us.
So you're saying open evidence is like those kind of, medical LLMs or whatever are like somewhat of a threat to Rubicon?
And I think just generally, like it's just changing the behavior of providers. Like it's before, forget about like the tech enabled piece. Like you'd be walking down the hall and you'd be a primary care provider. You'd see your cardiology colleague and you might stop and ask them a question. I think now the gut reaction is, well, I might have the answer, here in this AI product or,
Interesting.
and there's good and bad to it. There's speed
Without the specialist, you mean?
without the specialist. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Got it. Thanks.
and I think it's that kind of like natural kind of AI first behavior, assuming they forget about put on to the side for a minute, like all of the quality risks and hallucination risks of AI and all the underlying issues with how the models are trained. The idea of having information faster, so a primary care team can make a better decision for their patient, and avoid potentially an unnecessary referral, and most importantly, just get the right care to that person at the right time is good. But then how do you preserve the quality, that comes along with having a peer provide consultation or see that patient? And I think these are the bigger questions that we have to figure out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
I also think
it's just-
about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's related, but it's in a separate field to what you're saying, Jeff. So I work at the Christensen Institute and I do our healthcare research, but we also have a vertical that's dedicated to education. And one of our lead education researcher is looking at how AI chatbots are interfering with student connection to other students and to not their mentors, but like counselors. And she has done like tons of research on this. So I would suggest to you her Substack. It's called Connection Error. And it might be really informative, mostly just for like, what does the evidence base say about how people generally are now going to AI more than they're going to their colleague, more than they're going to their friend, et cetera. Even though it's not healthcare specific, it might just be useful from a human behavior perspective as you all are trying to figure this out.
Amazing. Is this the right one? Julia Friedland Fisher?
Yep, that's right.
Thank you.
It's everywhere, isn't it? Seriously. It's
Ben Summers,
revolutionizing.
what I appreciate about
revolutionizing like way people work.
Yeah, I like you bring in like kind of like the psychology behind it and like stuff like that, and like the actual kind of like first principles thinking, which I really enjoy. So that's a good note. All right. Well, I got a couple other things we can chat about real quick. Just for anybody who might be watching this later, I did say I was going to do a quick overview of the kind of hospital and health system Q3 outlook, based on kind of Q3 earnings reports and also what folks are saying at recent investor conferences and things like that. A lot of the stuff we've already talked about. A lot of it has to do with policy-based things like, are the enhanced subsidies sticking around? Lots of uncertainty around that. So that remains to be seen. But more just from like an operational perspective, all of the major operators saw very strong reimbursement growth. And that was mostly stemming from a lot of supplemental payment programs. Certain states came online in Q3. And so that was booked as revenue. And then just kind of strong acuity and strong just pricing performance across the board. Other notable on the volume side is continued volume growth, but like decelerating growth in Q3. So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like we're kind of, at least for the for-profits, it seems like we're kind of at like peak like growth, especially with kind of ACA subsidies being in flux, like peak hospital operating growth. HCA, I remember mentioning, they mentioned at a recent investor conference, hey, if subsidies continue on, our guidance is like 2 to 3 or 3 to 4% overall admissions growth for 26. If they're online, it'll be 3 to 4%. If they're not, it'll be 2 to 3%. So really, it's kind of like a 1 to 1.5% lever for HCA specifically. Again, not knowing how much exposure they have versus other other players in other markets, but they do have like 60% of their book in Florida and Texas, which I think tends to be larger ACA shops, just from like a population standpoint. So take that for what it's worth. Another thing I found very notable was just we are at the bottom as far as like contract labor and like the labor market is concerned. It's almost like a period put at the end of the sentence now, but they talk about contract labor as a percentage of salaries and wages. All the operators do, and it has basically like gone from the peak down here all the way down, and now it's kind of like flatlining out, with each kind of player at between 2 to call it like 4 to 5% of costs, and that's on kind of like nursing, clinical staff, and those sorts of things. The biggest pressure point for the for-profits, especially Ardent, they had a lot of commentary around this, was in professional fees and servicing hospitalists, radiologists, anesthesiologists, etc. Ardent it had a lot of very concerning comments about just inflation. I think that they had expected to see some deceleration in that trend and actually saw either flat or an uptick in those costs. And specifically called out radiologists as like a key shortage area for them. So that will be something investors, analysts harp on to start the year next year, and continued trend is just like overall, what is the sustainability of the physician employment, physician subsidy model, availability of these really, shortage prone providers, especially for a hospital or health system in like more of a mid-sized market like Ardent, where there's less availability of resources, lower labor pool. It's very apparent in the numbers that they're seeing a crunch there. On the supply side, none of them really mentions too much pressure around like tariffs or anything like that. They all have their own GPOs, and any kind of uptick in supplies was related to acuity in case mix more than actual kind of inflation. So I think that's pretty much everything from a thematic standpoint. Let me scroll through my notes real quick and see if there's anything else. I think that the main thing was there's still a lot of uncertainty around 26. Like UHS and I think it was CHS mentioned some quantified numbers around kind of supplemental payments and kind of unwinding of ACA and those sorts of things. But other than that, we're still kind of in a waiting game for those companies to kind of tell us, what's next, what's coming. So I think we'll have more clarity come February and March when they announce kind of full year and outlook for 26. One other thing I will mention that I forgot was kind of this arms race around denials and prior authorization, and really a lot of AI usage in like RCM specifically. That was called out. I think community health systems called out denials quite a bit that were elevated. I imagine that's worse in other health systems. We mentioned Ballad Health earlier, right? They're having Medicare Advantage plans downgrade their admissions to observation, which is a huge revenue hit, contribution margin hit, obviously. I think that you're probably going to see more of that battle, as Medicare Advantage has its own headwinds and that whole market tries to right size. And then you have like the AI bots and so forth on the provider front, optimizing and calculating and checking every single potential iota of information to bill, right? And surface those insights.
So is it the battle of the AI tools between the
I think so.
providers?
Yeah. I've talked to both separately, and they're like, the providers are very much so like, hey, we need this to catch up to the payers, right? And then the payers are like, there's so much, froth and waste, like in overbilling happening. We need to just like automatically shave off 5% of your, reimbursement or whatever it is. So it's like very just kind of Wild Westy right now with the kind of emergence of AI in that clinical or like the coding and documentation kind of stuff. And it makes a lot of sense because as more hospitals and health systems deploy the ambient solutions, those solutions are moving into CDI or tying into the EHR, creating these very robust, it's great for the clinician, but creating these very robust clinical records of information. And then you've got, trained models that can look through that and surface potentially misdiagnoses or say or argue this needs to be level 5 versus level 4, like those kinds of things. And it's a whole new ball game essentially, right? Like you can do that across the entire spectrum of revenue cycle management, whether it's like collections and patient facing communication, intake, the whole process can be automated, or a lot of the process can be automated, which is why you're seeing so much M&A in revenue cycle management too. There's a lot of private equity activity, and Waystar is doing really well. Yeah. So, and then the whole kind of new, what is it called? Smarter DX, Smarter Technologies platform. Google that because they, raised a lot of funding, Smarter DX, to be this kind of CDI AI platform. And then they raised a ton of money, grew a ton, and then got rolled up into this private equity platform with New Mountain Capital. And it's this whole kind of Smarter Technologies platform now. Very, very interesting. But yeah, so I would say, those are some pretty notable trends to watch as far as just, hospitals and health systems thematically are concerned headed into 26. Final thing I'll mention is just really just no M&A activity. You've got, I think a lot of 26 and 25 and 24 has been a lot of portfolio optimization, health system transformation, and kind of right sizing where are your hospitals and where are your ambulatory points and those sorts of things. 3 years ago, HCA said we want 12 to 13 sites per hospital, and now they're saying they want 20 per hospital by 2030. So, and that's all pretty much de novo and or like urgent care tuck-ins or those sorts of things. It's not really, you're not buying another health system. You're not. They are a little bit. They're buying a hospital every now and then, those sorts of things. But the biggest kind of poster child for this example has been Ascension. In 2025, they acquired AmSurge, which is the large ambulatory surgery center management platform. They've got a ton of presence nationally. I think just under 200 ASC, something like that. And now Ascension is kind of this perfect case study for health system transformation and how do you leverage your ambulatory network, and now what, right? Like, so you bought it for $4 billion, now what, right? And they've divested a lot of hospitals and trying to figure that out. I will say to that point, Drew, who worked for Atrium, as I mentioned, he was at the Jefferies not-for-profit healthcare conference in New York, I think, and Ascension and Providence presented there, and because they have public bondholders who are investors, they have to upload those presentations to the internet or like to their website or whatever. I just uploaded those presentations to the community hub, and there's some really, especially the Ascension one, really interesting strategic material on current footprint for both Ascension and AmSurge, and kind of what they're thinking as far as like next steps and more kind of high level strategy, those sorts of things. But definitely recommend giving that one a glance. I'll probably write about it in December just as a kind of lighter image forward post. But yeah, I feel like I just said a mouthful, so I'll shut up. But lots of, always lots of interesting things going on in hospital land.
Thanks for that overview, Blake. Question on M&A. Do you think it's gonna, back to Blake's predictions for 2026?
Oh
Do
yeah.
you think it'll pick back up? Like, what's gonna be the trigger event that pushes things in a different direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. It always cracks me up. So I used to work for a healthcare valuation firm, and every year we would say we expect M&A to tick back up and next year kind of thing. So there's like the consulting angle where it's like we expect greater activity.
Yeah.
But I do think especially with all the headwinds, if more people are uninsured, those sorts of things, I could see some survival consolidation in the hospital
Yeah.
lands kind of happen in the back half of next year. I could also see like if the government shutdown persists, I could see a lot of people trying to like push things through really quickly, like do an IPO or like certain larger transactions, those sorts of things. Like I could see that happening. Generally speaking, I feel like most of the stuff gets announced, like most of the big stuff gets announced like early in the year. So I think that'll kind of be a tell, like what gets put out in January opportunistically versus like from a survival standpoint, right? But I'll say like in general, I would assume M&A increases from here because it has just been there's been like nothing. Like
Right. There's
really,
like a go.
sorry, Ed Summers, you broke up just a little bit. I don't know if that happened to anyone else. Could you repeat that?
Like only one way to go. Like up is the only
Yeah.
direction.
Because to Jeff's point, like all of the mergers and acquisitions have been like through bankruptcies. They have not been actual like, hey, we want to work together and that kind of thing.
Hey guys, I got to jump off. But
Yeah, this is a good stopping point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Good to talk to you.
Nice.
Keep us updated.
Nice talking with everyone. Very good.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Same to you.
I will say, for the folks still on, we are trying to push more for kind of like community interaction, and we're doing like Q&As for the Tuesday Send in Hospitalogy now. So if you've ever got any thoughts around any of those questions that are posed, or if you have any of your own questions, feel free to just like post them and or shoot a note to me or Kat, who's on the line. And I also put out a predictions questionnaire. Like if you've got any predictions, feel free to drop them on that thread. That's also on the hub, and I'll be including that. My spicy predictions for 26. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, we won't steal yours. M&A is going to pick up.
Right. Yeah. That's an easy one. You can have that one.
Yeah, the Trump wanting to put his name on something one is, I think, is the easy one.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially with everything that's happening. But it's still like a little spicy,
Yeah.
It's probably not what most people are thinking about in terms of like healthcare predictions for next year. So I think people will like it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Thanks, all. I appreciate it. All right, well, good to catch up with you guys. Kat, you just came off mute. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, real quick, you guys know we're doing bigger pushes. Those that filled out the surveys for the community, thank you. Like, that was huge. The feedback has been overwhelmingly fantastic. Definitely aligns with what we think, but also things like great ideas and things along those lines. So Q&As, please participate. Any ideas you have, my DMs are completely open. I'm all for suggestions, feedback, anything you want to give. I love it. The more info we have, the more we can do. Data is rad. I'm a big fan. Lastly, though, we did just put out some placeholders for December 5th in some key markets. Not in Connecticut, Jeff, but feel free to lead the charge. December 5th.
The train in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do it.
So
Exactly.
we've got
That's
New
probably
York,
the answer.
Nashville, I want to say Dallas with Blake, we love that, and Chicago. But the idea is getting everybody, because there's a lot of cohorts in these major cities and other cities as well, getting you guys together to meet up, take a load off. You don't have to talk about work, you can, but if you live in those cities and you want to raise your hand to volunteer, like, hey, I'd like to be a co-host and pick out a spot for us to meet up, let me know, anything along those lines. But the idea is, like, let's meet in person if we can. So check it out, let me know if you have any questions or if you have ideas. So I really appreciate y'all. I learn so much from these calls, you have no idea. My background's marketing, but it's amazing the likeliness and the translation that I can pick up on and the things I learn. I'm so grateful every day for these calls. They're great. Yeah. Thanks, man. You guys are rad.
All right.
Yeah, that's
thanks,
my
Jeff. Yeah, thanks, y'all. Good to catch up. Jeff, good luck with the new baby. That's
Thank you.
exciting.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Yes, congrats.
Congrats.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, you too.
See y'all.
Hi guys, have a good weekend.